Hey everybody, here, Mr. Hart here once again for Chapter 2 of The Outsiders. We are on page 19. Dally was waiting for Johnny and me under the streetlight at the corner of Pickett and Sutton, and since we got there early, we had time to go to the drugstore and the shopping center and goof around. We bought Cokes and blew the straws at the waitress and walked around eyeing things that were lying out in the open until the manager got wise to us and suggested we leave. He was too late, though, because Dally walked out with 2 packages of Cools under his jacket. Then we went across the street and down Sutton a little way to the Dingo. There's a lot of drive-ins in town. The Socias always go to the way out and to Rusty's. And the Greasers, well, we go to the Dingo and to Jay's. The Dingo is a pretty rough hangout. There's always a fight going on there, and even once a girl got shot there. We walked around talking to all the greasers and hoods we knew. We leaned up against car windows or we hopped into back seats. And they were getting in on who was running away and who was in jail and who was going with who. And who could whip who, and they were talking about who stole what and when and where and why they stole it. We knew about everybody there. There was a pretty big fight while we were there between a big 23-year-old greaser and a Mexican hitchhiker. We left when the switchblades came out because the cops would be coming soon and nobody in his right mind wants to be around when the fuzz shows up. We crossed Sutton and cut around behind Spencer's Special, the discount house, and chased 2 junior high kids across the field for a few minutes. By then it was dark, enough to sneak into the back fence of the nightly double drive-in movie. It was the biggest in town and showed 2 movies every night. On weekends it even showed 4. You could say you were going to nightly double and have time to go all over town. We had the money to get in. It only costs $0.25 if you're not in a car. But, Dally hated to do things the legal way. He liked to show that he didn't care whether there was a law or not. He went around trying to break laws, just for the fun of it. We went to the rows of seats in front of the concession stand and we sat down. Nobody else was there except 2 girls who were sitting in the front row. Dally eyed them coolly. Then he walked down the aisle and sat right behind them. I had a sick feeling that Dally was up to his usual tricks, and I was right. He started talking, loud enough for the 2 girls to hear. He started out bad, and then it got worse. Dallas could talk awful dirty if he wanted to, and I guess at this moment, he wanted to. I felt my ears get hot. Two-Bit or Steve or even Soda would have gone right along with him just to see if they could embarrass the girls too. But that kind of kicks just doesn't appeal to me. So I sat there, I struck dumb, and Johnny left hastily to get a Coke. I wouldn't have felt so embarrassed if they had been greasy girls. I mean, I might have even helped old Dallas if they were greasy girls. But these 2 girls, they weren't our kind. They were tough-looking girls. They were dressed sharp and they were really good-looking. They were about 16 or 17. One had short dark hair and the other one had long red hair. The redhead was getting mad, or scared. She sat up straight and she was chewing hard on her gum. The other one pretended not to hear Dally. Dally was getting impatient. He put his feet up on the back of the redhead's chair, winked at me, and then he beat his own record for saying something dirty. She turned around and she gave him a cool stare. "Take your feet off my chair and shut your trap." Boy, she was good looking. I'd seen her before. She was a cheerleader at our school. I'd always thought she was a stuck-up. Dally merely looked at her and he kept his feet where they were. "Who's gonna make me?" The other one turned around and watched us. "That's the greaser that jockeys for Slash J sometimes," she said as if we couldn't hear her. I had heard the same tone a million times. Greaser, greaser, greaser. Oh yeah, I had heard that tone before too many times. What are they doing in a drive-in without a car, I thought. And then Dallas said, "I know you 2. I've seen you around the rodeos." "It's a shame you can't ride bull half as good as you can take it," the redhead said coolly and turned back around. But that comment, that didn't bother Dally in the least. "You 2 barrel race, huh?" "You better leave us alone," the redhead said in a biting voice, "or I'll call the cops." "Oh my, Dally looked bored. "You've got me scared to death. You ought to see my record sometime, baby." He grinned slyly. "Guess what I've been in for?" "Please leave us alone. Why don't you just be nice and leave us alone?" Dally grinned roguishly. I'm very nice. You want a Coke? She was mad by then. I wouldn't drink if I was starving in the desert. Now get lost, Hood! Dally Miri shrugged that off, and he just strolled off away. The girl looked at me. I was half scared of her, but of course I'm half scared of nice girls too, especially Socias. Are you going to start in on us now too? I shook my head wide-eyed. No. Suddenly she smiled. Gosh, she was pretty. Nah, you don't look the type. What's your name? I wish you didn't ask me my name. I hate to tell people my name for the first time. Ponyboy Curtis. Then I waited for the, you're kidding, or that's your real name, or any other types of remarks I usually get. Ponyboy's my real name, and personally I like it, and I don't care what people say. The redhead, though, she just smiled. That's an original and lovely name. Yeah, my dad was an original person, I said. I've got a brother named Soda Pop, and it says so on his birth certificate, too. Well, my name's Sherry, but I'm called Cherry because of my hair. Cherry Valance. I know, I said. You're a cheerleader at my school. We go to the same school, you know. You don't look old enough to be in high school, the dark-haired girl said. No, I'm not. I got put up a year in grade school. Cherry was now looking at me. What's a nice, smart kid like you doing running around like trash like that? I felt myself stiffen. I'm a Grease, same as Dally. He's my buddy. I'm sorry, Ponyboy, she said softly. And then she said, wait a minute. Your brother's Soda Pop. Does he work at the gas station? You know, a DX, I think? Yeah, that's him. Man, your brother is one doll. I might have guessed you were brothers. You look alike. I grinned with pride at that. I don't think I look one bit like Soda, but it's not every day I hear Soch tell me they think my brother is a doll. Didn't he used to ride in rodeos, you know, saddle the bronc? Yeah, but Dad made him quit once he tore a ligament. He's still hanging around the rodeos, though, a lot. I've seen you two barrel race. You're pretty good. Thanks, Cherry said, and the other girl, who was named Marcia, said, how come we don't see your brother at school? He's not any older than 16 or 17, is he? I winced inside. I told you I can't stand it that Soda dropped out. He's a dropout. Dropout made me think of some poor, dumb-looking hoodlum wandering the streets, breaking out streetlights. It didn't fit my happy-go-lucky brother at all. It fit Dally perfectly, but you could hardly ever say something like that about Soda Pop. Johnny came back then and sat down beside me. He looked for Dally, then managed to shy hi to the girls and tried to watch the movie. He was nervous, though. Johnny was always nervous around strangers. Cherry looked at him, sizing him up as she had me, and then she smiled softly, and I knew she had sized him up right. Dally came striding back with an armful of Cokes. He handed one to each of the girls and sat down beside Cherry. This might cool you off. She gave him an incredulous look, and then she threw her Coke in his face. That might cool you off, greaser. After you wash your mouth and learn to talk and act decent, I might cool you off too. Dally wiped the Coke off of his face with his sleeve, and he smiled dangerously. If I had been Cherry at that moment, I would have gone and beat right the heck out of there, because I knew that smile from Dally. That smile was dangerous. Fiery, huh? Well, that's the way I like him. He started to pull his arm around her, but Johnny reached over and stopped him. Leave her alone, Dally. Huh? Dally was taken off guard. He stared at Johnny in disbelief. Johnny couldn't say boo to goose. Johnny gulped and got a little pale. But he said, you heard me. Now leave her alone. Dallas scowled for a second. If it had been me or Two-Bit or Soda or really any of the other of the gang, anyone but Johnny, Dally would have flattened him without a moment's hesitation. You just didn't tell Dally Winston what to do. One time in a dime store, a guy told him to move over at the counter of the candy. Dally just turned around and he belted him so hard that it knocked a tooth loose out of the guy. It was a complete stranger too. He didn't even know him. But Johnny was the gang's pet. And Dally just couldn't hit him because he was Dally's pet too. So Dally got up and he stalked off. His fists were jammed in his pockets and there was a frown huge on his face. And Dally didn't come back. Cherry sighed in relief. Thanks. He had me scared to death. Johnny managed an admiring grin. You sure didn't show it. Nobody talks to Dally like that. She smiled. From what I just saw, you do. Johnny's ears got all red. I was still staring at him. It had taken more than nerve for him to say what he just said to Dally. Johnny worshipped the ground Dallas walked on, and I had never heard Johnny talk back to anyone, much less his hero. Marcia grinned at us. She was a little smaller than Cherry. She was cute, but that Cherry Valance, she was a real looker. Y'all sit up here with us. You can protect us. John and I looked at each other. He grinned suddenly, raising his eyebrows so that they disappeared under his bangs. Would we ever have something? Oh my goodness, would we have something to tell the boys now? His eyes said plainly. We had picked up 2 girls, and classy ones at that. Not any greasy broads for us, but real socias. Soda's gonna flip when I told him this news. Okay, I said nonchalantly. I mean, we might as well. I sat between them, and Johnny sat next to Cherry. How old are y'all? Marcia asked. 14, I said. 16, said Johnny. That's funny. I thought you were both 16, Cherry finished for her. And I was grateful that Cherry finished for her too, because Johnny, let's just say he doesn't look 16. He looks 14, and he knew it. And it bugged him something awful that he looked so small. Johnny grinned. How come y'all ain't scared of us like you were Dallas? Cherry sighed. You two are too sweet to scare anyone. First of all, you didn't join in Dallas's dirty talk, and you made him leave us alone. And when we asked you to sit up here with us, you didn't act like it was an invitation to make out for the night. Besides that, I've heard about Dallas Winston, and he looked as hot as nails and twice as tough. You two, though, you don't look mean. Sure, I mean, we just look young and innocent, I said. No, Cherry said slowly and looking at me carefully. Not innocent. You've seen too much to be innocent. But you're just not dirty. Oh, Dallas is okay, Johnny said defensively, and I nodded. You always stick up for your buddies, no matter what they do. When you're in a gang, you stick up for all the members of the gang. If you don't stick up for them and stick together, make like brothers, it isn't a gang anymore. It's a pack. A snarling, distrustful, bickering pack like the Socias and the social clubs of the street gangs in New York, or the Wolves of the Timber. He's tough, but he's a cool old guy. Yeah, he'd leave you alone if he knew you, I said. And that was true. When Steve's cousin from Kansas came down, Dally was decent enough to her, and he also watched all his swearing the entire time. We all did around nice girls who were cousinly type. I don't know how to explain it. We try to be nice to the girls we see once in a while, like cousins or the girls in class, but we still want to watch a nice girl go on by a street corner, and we'll say all kind of lousy stuff about her. Don't ask me why. To be honest, I don't know why. Well, Marcia said with finality, I'm glad he doesn't know us. I kind of admire him, Cherry said softly. So only I heard, and then we settled down to watch the movie. Oh yeah, and we found out why that they were without a car. They'd come with their boyfriends, but they walked out on them when they found out that the boys had brought some booze along. The boys had gotten angry, and they decided to leave them. I don't care if they did leave us. It's not my idea of a good time to sit in a drive-in and watch people get drunk. You could tell by the way she said it that it was her idea of a good time, that her idea of a good time was probably high class, and it was also probably expensive. Nothing to do with booze, though. They decided to stay and see the movie anyway. It was one of those beach party movies with no plot and no acting, but a lot of girls in bikinis and some swinging songs, so it was all right. We were all four sitting there in silence when suddenly a strong hand came down on Johnny's shoulder, and another one came on mine with a deep voice that said, "Okay, greasers, you've had it." I almost jumped out of my skin. It was like having someone leap out from behind a door and yell, "Boo!" at you. I looked fearfully over my shoulder, and there was Two-Bit grinning like a chissy cat. "Glory, Two-Bit, scare us to death." He was good at voice imitations, and it sounded like one of those snarling Soch. Then I looked at Johnny. His eyes were shut, and he was white as a ghost. His breath was coming in like smothered gas. Two-Bit knew better than to scare Johnny like that. I guess he'd forgotten, though. He's kind of scatterbrained like that. Johnny opened his eyes and said weakly, Hey, Two-Bit. Two-Bit messed up his hair. I'm sorry, kid. I forgot." He climbed over the chair and plopped down beside Marcia. "Who's this, your great-aunt?" "Yeah, great-grandmother's twice removed," Cherry said smoothly. I couldn't tell if Two-Bit was drunk or not. It's kind of hard to tell with him. See, he acted boozed up sometimes even when he was sober. He cocked one eyebrow up and the other one down, which he always does when something puzzles him or bothers him, or when he feels like saying something smart. "Shoot, you're 96 if you're a day." "Oh, I'm a knight," said Marcia brightly. Two-Bit stared at her admiringly. "Ah, brother, you're a sharp one. Where'd you two ever get to pick up by... Why did you two get picked up by a couple of greasy hoods like Pony and Johnny? We kind of picked them up, Marcia said. We're really Arabian slave traders, and we're thinking about Shanghaiing them. They're worth about 10 camels apiece, at least, I would say. 5. They don't talk Arabian, Two Bits disagreed. I don't think so, at least. Say something in Arabian, Johnny Cake. Oh, cut it out, Johnny broke in. Dally was bothering them, and he left. They wanted us to sit with them to protect them. Against wisecracking greasers like you, probably. Two-Bit grinned at that, because Johnny didn't usually say sassy things like that. We thought we were doing good if we could get him to talk at all. Incidentally, we don't mind being called greasers by another greaser anyways. That's always fair game. It's kind of playful even when we say it to one another. Hey, where is old Dally anyways? He went hunting for some action, booze or dames or fight. I hope he don't get jailed again. He just got out. He'll probably find a fight, Two-Bit stated cheerfully. That's why I came over. Mr. Timothy Shepard and company are looking for whoever so kindly slashed their car tires, and since Mr. Curly Shepard spotted Dallas going to it, well, let's just say Dally might get jumped. Does he have a blade on him? Not that I know of. I think he's got a piece of pipe, but he busted his blade this morning. Good. Well, Tim will fight fair if Dally don't pull a blade on him. Dally shouldn't have any trouble beating all them up. Jerry and Marcia were staring at us at this point. You don't believe in playing rough or anything, do you? Hey, a fair fight isn't rough, Two-Bit said. Blades are rough, and so are chains and heaters and pool sticks and rumbles. Skin fighting isn't rough, though. It blows out steam better than anything. There's nothing wrong with throwing a couple punches. Socials are rough. They gang up on one or two of us, or they rumble each other with their social clubs. But us greasers, we stick together. But when we do fight among ourselves, it's a fair fight between two. And Dallas deserves whatever he gets because he slashed tires ain't no joke when you got to work to pay them off. He got spotted too, and that was his fault for getting caught. Our one rule besides stick together is don't get caught. He might get beat up, he might not. But either way, there's not going to be any blood feud between our outfit and the Shepards. If we needed them tomorrow, they would show up and they would back us up 100%. If Tim beats Dallas head-in, then tomorrow he asks Dally to help in a rumble, well, we'd all show, and Dally would come too. Dally would be the first one to get his kicks. You know what? He got caught. He slashed a tire, so it's time for him to pay up. No sweat. Yeah, boy, Cherry said sarcastically. I guess it's all real simple, isn't it? Sure, Marcia said unconcerned. If he gets killed or something, you just bury him. No sweat. You dig, okay, baby? Two-Bit grinned and lit a cigarette. Anyone want some of my weed? Just so you guys all know, weed back in those days is just referring to cigarettes. That's all. Just cigarettes. Okay, we're back. I looked at Two-Bit admiringly. He sure put things into words good. Maybe he was still a junior at 18 and a half, and maybe his sideburns were too long, and maybe he did get boozed up too much, but he sure did understand things. Jerry and Marcia shook their heads at his offering of cigarettes, but Johnny and I reached for one. Johnny's color was back and his breathing was regular, but his hand was shaking ever so slightly. A cigarette would help steady it. Pony boy, will you come with me to get some popcorn? Cherry asked. I jumped up. Sure, y'all want some? I do, said Marcia. She was finishing the Coke Dally had given her. I realized that when Marcia and Cherry that Marcia and Cherry weren't alike. Cherry had said she wouldn't drink Dally's Coke if she was starving, and she meant it. And it was a principled thing. But Marcia saw no reason to throw away a perfectly good free Coke. Me too, said Two-Bit, and he flipped me a 50-cent piece. Get Johnny some too, I'm buying. He added as Johnny started to reach into his jeans pocket. We went to the concession stand, and as usual, there was a line a mile long, so we had to wait. Quite a few kids turned to look at us. You didn't see a kid grease and a social girl often together. Cherry didn't seem to notice. Your friend, the one with the sideburns, is he okay? He ain't dangerous like Dallas, if that's what you mean. Yeah, I'd say he's okay. She smiled and her eyes showed us that her mind was on something else. Johnny, he's been hurt bad sometime, hasn't he? It was more of a statement than a question, though. He seems hurt and scared. Yeah, it was the socials, I said nervously, because there were plenty of socials milling around, and some of them were giving me dirty looks, as if I shouldn't be with Cherry or something. And I don't like to talk about it either. Johnny getting beat up, I mean. But I started in, talking a little faster than I normally do, because I don't like to think about it either. You see, Johnny got beat up almost 4 months ago. I'd walked around to the DX station to get a bottle of pop to see Steve and Soda because they always buy me a couple of bottles and let me help out on the cars. I don't like to go on weekends because then there is usually a bunch of girls down there flirting with Soda Pop. All kinds of girls. So too. I don't care too much for girls yet. Soda says that I'm going to grow out of that, though, soon. Because he did. It was a warming spring day and the sun was shining bright, but it was still chilly and dark by the time we started home. We were walking because we had left Steve's car at the station, and at the corner of the block there's a wide open field where we play football and hang out, and it's often a site for rumbles and fistfights. We were passing it, kicking rocks on the street and finishing our last bottle of Pepsi, when Steve noticed something lying on the ground. He picked it up. It was Johnny's blue jean jacket, the only jacket Johnny had. "Looks like Johnny forgot his jacket," Steve said, slinging it over his shoulder to take it to Johnny's house. And suddenly he stopped and he examined it more carefully because there was a stain, the color of rust across the color. He looked at the ground and there was some more stains on the grass, and he looked up and across the field with a stricken expression on his face. I think we all heard the low moan and we saw the dark, motionless hump on the other side of the lot at the same time. Soda reached him first. Johnny was lying face down on the ground. Soda turned him over gently, and at that moment I nearly got sick. Someone had beaten Johnny badly. We were used to seeing Johnny banged up because his father clobbered him around all the time. His father had quick hands. And although it made us madder than heck, we couldn't really do anything about it. But those beatings had been nothing like this before. Because Johnny's face was cut up and bruised and swollen, and there was a wide gash from the temple to his cheekbone. He would carry those scars his entire life. His white t-shirt was splattered with blood. I just stood there, trembling with sudden cold. I thought he might be dead, to be honest. Surely nobody could be beaten like that and live. Steve closed his eyes for a second and muffled a groan as he dropped on his knees beside Soda. And somehow the gang sensed what had happened. Two-Bit was suddenly there beside me, and for once in his comical grin was gone. His dancing gray eyes were stormy. Derry had seen us from the porch and ran towards us, suddenly skidding to a halt. Dally was there too, swearing under his breath and turning away with a sick expression on his face. I wondered about it vaguely. Dally had seen people killed before on the streets on the west side. Why did he look so sick now? "Johnny?" Soda lifted him up, and he held him against his shoulder. He gave him the limp body a slight shake. "Hey, Johnny Cake, wake up, wake up!" But Johnny didn't open his eyes. But suddenly there came a soft question. "Soda?" "Yeah, it's me. Now don't talk. You're going to be okay." "There's a whole bunch of them," Johnny went on, swallowing and ignoring Soda's comment. "A blue Mustang full. I got so scared." He tried to swear, but suddenly he started crying, fighting to control himself, then sobbing all the more because he couldn't. I'd seen Johnny take a whipping from a 2x4 from his old man and never let out a whimper. That made it worse to see him break now. Soda just held him and pushed Johnny's hair back out of his eyes. "It's okay, Johnny Cake. They're gone now. It's okay." Finally, between the sobs, Johnny managed to gasp out his story. He had been hunting out our football to practice a few kicks when a blue Mustang had pulled up beside the lot. There were 4 Socias inside that Mustang. They caught up with him, and one of them had a lot of rings on his hand. And that's what had cut up Johnny so badly. It wasn't just that they had beaten him half to death, because he could take that. They had scared him. They had threatened him with everything under the sun. Johnny was high-strung anyway, a nervous wreck from getting belted every time he turned around from hearing his parents fight all the time. Living in those types of conditions might have turned someone else rebellious and bitter. It was killing Johnny, though. He had never been a coward. He was a good man in a rumble. He stuck up for a gang and kept his mouth shut good around cops. But after the night of the beating, Johnny was jumpier than ever. I didn't think he'd ever get over it. Johnny never walked by himself again alone after that. And Johnny, who was the most law-abiding citizen of all of us, now carried in his back pocket a 6-inch switchblade. He would use it too if he ever got jumped again. He told us that much. They had scared him that much. He would kill the next person who jumped him again. Nobody was ever going to beat him like that again. Not over his own dead body. I'd nearly forgotten that Cherry was listening to me by the end of the story. But when I came back to reality and I looked at her, I was startled to find her as white as a sheet. Just so you know, not all the Socs are like that. You have to believe me, Ponyboy. Not all of us are like that. Sure, I said. That's like saying all you greasers are like Dally Winston. I'll bet he's jumped a few people in his lifetime, too. And at that moment, I digested that because it was true. Dally jumped people a lot. He had told us stories about muggings in New York that made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. But not all of us were that bad, that's for sure. Cherry no longer looked sick, but she looked sad. I'll bet you think Socials have it made. We're the rich kids, the West Side Soc. But I'll tell you something, Ponyboy, and it may come to you as a surprise, but we have troubles that you've never even heard of. Do you want to know something? And she looked straight into my eye at this moment. Things are rough all over. I believe you, but we better get back with that popcorn or Two-Bit's going to think I ran off of his money. We went back and watched the movie through again. Marcia and Two-Bit were hitting it off just fine. Both had the same scatterbrained sense of humor. But Cherry and Johnny and I were just sat there looking at the movie and not talking. I quit worrying about everything and thought about how nice it was to sit with a girl without having to listen to her swear or beat her off of a club. I knew Johnny liked it too. He didn't talk to girls much. Once while Dallas was in reform school, Sylvia had started hanging on to Johnny and sweet-talking him, and Steve got a hold of her and told her if she tried any of her tricks with Johnny that he would personally beat the tar out of her. Then he gave Johnny a lecture on girls and how a sneaking little broad like Sylvia could get him into a whole lot of trouble. And as a result, Johnny never spoke to girls much. But whether that was because he was scared of Steve or because he was shy, I could never tell. I got the same lecture from Two-Bit after we'd picked up a couple of girls downtown one day. I thought it was funny because girls are one subject that even Derry thinks I use my head about. And it really had been funny because Two-Bit half crocked when he gave me the lecture, and he told me some stories that made me want to crawl under the floor or something. But he had been talking about girls like Sylvia and girls that he and Dally and the rest of them picked up at drive-ins in downtown. He never told me anything about a Soci girl. So I figured it was all right to be sitting here with them now. Even if they did have their own troubles, I couldn't see what Socias would have to sweat about. I mean, what? The fact that they have too many good grades? The fact that they have too many good cars or good girls? Madras and Mustangs and Corvairs? Man, I thought, if I had worries like that, I would consider myself pretty lucky. You know what, though? I know better than thinking like that. Guys, this is a very good book. I do want to talk about characterization here. I want you guys to think to yourself, what can we learn about our characters so far in the book? What can we learn about the personality of Johnny, about Pony, about Two-Bit, about Dally? The first chapter has a lot of direct characterization. They tell us a lot of direct information. But this next chapter, there's a lot more indirect characterization where we can learn about these characters through their actions. So we can learn about Dally from the way he treats the girls. We can learn about Ponyboy by the way he treats the girls. We can learn about Two-Bit by the way he interacts with them. We can learn about Cherry by the way she interacts with Dally as well. So I want us to think about all these things. I hope you guys are enjoying this book so far, and I hope you guys are just in general having the best quarantine possible. I miss everybody, and take care. Bye-bye.